Good morning, welcome. Sorry, I'm just going to check my volume. Again, we can just take a moment to arrive here. Just noticing whatever might be carried over in the mind or in the body, subtle tensions or over tensions. And just giving ourselves the space and permission and invitation to drop, to become heavier, more relaxed. To just, even for the time being, to just simply be. Maybe letting out a sigh. Feeling your feet on the ground, your hands in your lap or at your sides. You don't even necessarily have to have your eyes closed. You can keep your eyes open if that feels more in alignment with your expression in the moment. Sometimes just closing our eyes can help us tune in more inward to what's happening in the sensations of the body and the mind, but it's not necessarily needed. To just be. This is the invitation. There's nothing to do or figure out, nowhere to get to. No specific experience to be had. Not even a specific posture to hold. But even just for this moment, just for this exercise, to let all that go. And the mind might be busy and distracted and taking you off different places, different fantasies, different ideas. Even just letting that be here without fighting it. without making yourself wrong. And if letting the thoughts be there is too overwhelming, even just moving your attention subtly into your hands and feet might help to reground some of that energy from spinning out. Or your seat on the chair or the floor. In this way, we're not dismissing any aspect of our experience or trying to make our experience different. Just noticing how it is, how we can maybe be with our experience in a different way that allows us to be more open. To be more embodied in a way. To not just experience the thoughts in the head, but to expand our awareness to include the body. It's opening ourselves to these subtle paradoxes where we're not trying to do anything, not trying to create a specific experience. Rather, at the same time, open ourselves to ways of being with our experience that allow us to be more open to them, to have a more spacious quality that imbues our experience. And once we redirect our attention or open ourselves to that more spacious quality, we don't need to hold our attention there or keep trying to make that happen. There we can also then rest again, let go of even that subtle movement or redirection or effort. This is the invitation. This is what we so long for, is to truly meet ourselves, to truly meet the moment, whatever is appearing. So just see if there's any part of you that's still holding back from this moment of totally surrendering into the moment. Seeing if there's any space to soften that, to surrender in deeper to the experience of the moment, the arising of the moment. Simply to be is enough. Sometimes it's so easy to carry on these beliefs about doing, needing to do something to make the moment okay or acceptable or valuable. And we can carry that even into our meditation, that it can be, there needs to be some effort that's done to be doing meditation. And this is just noticing that if that's appearing for you, this feeling like something's missing because you're not doing something or trying to achieve something with the meditation. I'm not trying to figure that out or psychoanalyze it, but just noticing if that movement is there. If it feels too empty or too like something's missing, if you're not engaged in some sort of effort or trying to make something happen through the process. But this is really truly just being in our being, opening to our being, resting in and moving from our being. And even for just this moment, trusting whatever wants to happen. Maybe there's a stretch or a movement or shuffling in your seat. possibly even to notice how we don't need to let go of our resting and being to move, to how they don't exclude each other. Maybe thoughts appear that maybe I'm not doing this right or understanding. And if those should appear, just noticing that too. We can let all of those thoughts be here without grabbing hold of them. Just noticing how when we grab hold of them, then the thoughts spiral into more and more problem solving. I need to figure this out and do this, and what does this mean and that mean? And as soon as we grab hold of the thought and believe the thought, and we believe the thought as soon as we grab hold of that thought, then we engage in the process of becoming again, of trying to fix and solve and get somewhere. But rather, if we can stay in this place of restedness, residing in our being, and those thoughts can come and there can be spaciousness around them without them having to mean anything about our experience or take us away from this sense of being. And all of the thoughts and the sensations can bubble up without them having to be a problem, without them meaning anything about us or life. Without them having to take us away again on this search, on this seeking to resolve, solve, become. Fix. And sometimes even the mind will grasp that, try to figure that out. What does that mean? Well, that might only be for certain people that are having a certain experience, but not for me in my experience because it's so chaotic or so this or that, contracted. And again, we can just notice if those thoughts appear and allow them to bubble up without grasping hold of them, without investing truth in them. So often it can be, and so many of us, that, oh, it's okay to be with my experience as it is, to accept my experience as it is, if it looks like this, if it feels like this. And we can just notice those subtle expectations, those subtle ideas. Those stipulations, that conditional love that we put on our experience, the limitations to what's acceptable and not acceptable. It truly is to be with our experience exactly as it is, no matter how it looks like, how it appears, whether it appears spacious and open or contracted and dense, whether it looks like we assume would be spiritual or not spiritual. And it's possible to be with every aspect of our humanity, every aspect of our experience, without it being a problem. And this doesn't mean that we then might not be called to move in a certain way or respond in a certain way, but we don't live in this perpetual hamster wheel of making everything into a problem to be solved, a problem to be resolved, to be fixed, to be overcome, in order for us to be okay. That it's possible to be with even the darkest parts of ourselves. From this place of permission to be, this open spaciousness, without it being a problem. Without it being a sign of some personal defect or misunderstanding or fallibility, limitation. So we can just take a few moments to just be with our experience as it is, in the silence and the stillness. We might even want to bow or put our hand on our heart to just really honor the sacredness of our being. It's so often overlooked as we so much more identify as the doer, the one that's doing. Thanking this being nature for always being there, for being available, being this place of refuge that we can come back to, that is one of peace and rest and openness and unconditional love and acceptance of whatever it is that may be appearing in our experience. For the wisdom it contains, for the peace it contains, the love it contains. Even the simplest of joy it contains. If it doesn't feel sincere, there's no need to make something happen or to try to be more sincere. You can offer something simply with the sincerest intention that you have. Sometimes for myself, if it doesn't feel sincere, just reminding myself that this is what truly matters to me. And even though right now it doesn't feel sincere, it doesn't feel like what truly matters, that I'm still here, I'm still willing to say it, being brought into alignment with the sincerity of the desire. Or saying nothing at all. Again, it's not about creating something or trying to make our experience a certain way. But really honoring the flow as this resting and being wants to move and express through you. We can open our eyes. Maybe let out a sigh. And just take a moment to be with each other, honoring each other for the courage and devotion that we've shown to keep continuing to show up. Show up for this place of beingness that exists within all of us. That so easily can be overlooked, dismissed, regarded as valueless or worthless by the doing mind, the doing culture that we reside in. Simply showing up and resting in this place of beingness together. And so much of a different experience as we move from this place of beingness. That we're so conditioned to believe that to get things done in the world, to be part of this world, that we need to move from this doingness, these thought patterns in the mind. But as we rest more deeply in this beingness, it moves us still in a different way. It moves us, it speaks through us, it moves our body, it moves where it needs to go. In a way that might not look like what we think it should look, but feels much more in alignment and harmony with the whole. It's not moving from this place of constant push-pull that the mind does, grasping at pleasure, pushing away, or being aversive to pain. Even the tendency of the mind to create problems, to grasp hold of thoughts that seem like something's wrong or missing, to take us on another journey. This is again this pattern of trying to find pleasure. That if we, this unconscious belief that if we change this or that, or become this or that, then we'll be okay. Then we'll have a good experience, then we'll be happy, then we'll be fulfilled. And sometimes on the spiritual journey, it can be so easily not seen. That we can see it in the popular culture where it's chasing jobs, chasing success, chasing this, chasing that. Sometimes it can be, as we move into the spiritual journey, it becomes kind of this hierarchy where we don't see that as part of the same momentum, the same pattern of chasing an experience, chasing an okayness that exists out there, that exists in the future. And the invitation of moving from this place of beingness is this place of inner okayness, inner wholeness, where we're not moving through the world to try to get and become something to make us okay. And it doesn't mean that we won't receive things or we won't become or change. But we're not doing it from this momentum, this energy that's seeking a better experience. That it truly is being in harmony with what is, even if it looks totally unlike we think it should look. As I was sharing just on Monday, noticing despair rising. And then the thoughts, the grabbing hold of the thoughts, oh, despair, that's not good. Then noticing that as soon as that thought was grabbed on, that this is something that is wrong and needs to be fixed and overcome, then noticing the mind grabbing hold of that and creating all of these stories and trying to fix and solve and get somewhere else. That can that just be here? And noticing even when these dark emotions appear, that there can be this space around them. That it doesn't, as soon as we believe something's wrong, then we contract around that and we identify, I'm the one that's experiencing despair and this is what it means about me. And then it becomes this whole kind of narcissistic selfing that happens. Rather than when we're in this place of beingness, that those deep, dark emotions can arise and they can still be held. It doesn't necessarily need to mean that anything's wrong with us. And again, it's so subtle. This is why we have to be our own gurus. is that sometimes it might be showing us that something is out of alignment in our life that's wanting to be seen. But we can open to all of that without being incessantly in the mind trying to fix and solve. We can rest in our beingness and be receptive to the wisdom within our own being to come to the forefront to show us what's being asked of us. What happens when we disregard our beingness is so often we just grab hold of the thought, and then we immediately are off on another chase, believing that anything that feels uncomfortable or dark means that something is wrong. Something is wrong with me. Something is wrong with my life. And so immediately, instead of resting in our being to allow the answer to emerge, to show us what is wanting to be seen or felt, we immediately go on this hunt of trying to fix and solve and make it go away so that we can be okay, which is totally understandable. But again, it's another chase. It's another dismissal of what is. And this is where we start becoming more and more acutely aware of how we dismiss what is. We turn it into something wrong. We create a story that it's something lacking in our life that's preventing us from being fully who we are, or could be, or as successful as we want to be, or as loving as we want to be. And then we go on a journey, instead of feeling that emotion, getting in touch with that emotion, meeting that emotion, and listening to that emotion. We assume we know what it means. We assume we know it's a problem. We assume we know what needs to be done about it. And then we are off again, leaving this experience behind, trying to fix, solve, overcome, improve. And it's really no different to any other kind of chasing success, chasing fulfillment, chasing relationships, chasing the perfect body, chasing youth, chasing whatever we're chasing. It might not feel like we're chasing, it might feel like I just want those things, but noticing how that plays out in our lives, that there's this subtle seeking, this subtle movement of trying to fix, of trying to make ourselves okay, that's continually playing out, that's keeping us separate from our experience. That there's a me over here that's judging and evaluating whatever the experience is, determining if it's acceptable or not acceptable. If it's acceptable, it's okay to be there, and we can be rested and relaxed. Sometimes even if it's acceptable, we grasp hold of it because we don't want it to go away. We fear that the unacceptable might come. Or it's unacceptable, and then we're judging and evaluating it, and then trying to manipulate this in some way, making it external to us. Or we might unhealthily cling to that emotion and create an identity around it. Because I experience despair, that means that I and despair are one. And this is where we have to be I have to be so careful in my wording too, because we can become identified it and then create this role of the victim around it. I'm a victim of life, therefore I'm feeling this emotion and I'm just going to be the despair. Or when we meet that emotion, we merge with that emotion, but it's not in a way where it's a sense of victimhood or self-loathing. We meet that emotion in the way of this curious attentiveness, this willingness to include that as part of the human experience. which has a very different feel to it. You might notice in your own experience, even just playing with, it doesn't need to be deep, dark emotions, but maybe more uncomfortable emotions. Or stories that we identify where we create a sense of victimhood around certain emotions or life events. And noticing what it's like to, instead of identifying ourselves with it as I am this, and this means something that's inherently wrong and defected about me, or that life is against me, or others are against me, or this is because, my family is so defective, or whatever our story might be around that. That we can be with the discomfort, we can be with the story, the life circumstances, the emotion, in a way where we invite it in. It's welcomed. It's wanting to be seen. It's wanting to be known. Become curious. What does it really feel like to be in despair or whatever emotion, uncomfortable sensations? Where does it show up in the body? What does it feel like? What message might it have? This way we're not pushing against it, or we're not grabbing hold of it to create an identity. We're allowing it to be there. It was so interesting for me to share that story on Monday, because there was a sense of shame in sharing that story, because it was feeling like, again, just even noticing within my own ideas of emotions that are acceptable and unacceptable, that at a certain point we shouldn't feel these emotions, or they shouldn't come up anymore. That I shouldn't feel a sense of hopelessness or despair. Not that I live in these emotions, but that they can be present. And somehow this idea that I had, even within my own mind, that those emotions were somehow a sign of lack of spiritual progress. And catching myself in that too, and seeing that it's not a sign of lack of progress, rather a sign of the humanity that lives in and through me, which is no different and includes everything. So can I then too open myself to experiencing that without making it a problem, without making it a sign of spiritual limitation or weakness? So it can be powerful to catch ourselves in these ways. Even noticing the thoughts that I'm this, noticing how for me, the role that I play or want to play in the world is this counselor, and how I shouldn't be experiencing these emotions if I'm going to be working with people or helping people. That this is a sign of my fallibility and inability to really be able to be there for another, to be of assistance, to really just noticing the stories. I share this as my story. This isn't about it being your story, but noticing all of the ideas that we have around certain emotions or certain life experiences or events that can come up, that we dismiss, that this shouldn't be happening. This shouldn't be happening now. I thought I've dealt with that, or I've overcome that, or what does that mean about me and my abilities? That in some sense, when we really open ourselves to it, we can see that, from my own experience anyway, that the more I've been able to be with and meet those really dark places in the human psyche, the more it actually has availed me to be available for others. don't necessarily want to use help because it sort of can have this connotation that there's one person that knows more than another person, but to be with someone in their pain. To meet them in that spot. That the less I've been available to that, the less I open to that, that I can never truly meet someone in that. There's what I've realized within myself is there's always this part of me that's then trying to spiritualize it or make it into this positive emotion or somehow dismiss it. Anything that I've dismissed within myself, and this is for us all, any emotions that we dismiss within ourselves, any experiences that we dismiss within ourselves, we then project onto the world and dismiss it in the world events, in our relationships with others, other people. So the more we're able to open and embrace the full totality of the human experience, which is kind of scary for most of us. Because not only does it include these very open, blissful states, but it also includes these very dark states. And they're just emotions that are coming through. And it's when we grab hold of them and create an identity around that this means something about me, that then it becomes the problem. That the emotion itself isn't a problem until we believe it is a problem. And this is what is so important to see. It's that nothing inherently is a problem in our life situation, our experiences, our emotions. None of it's a problem until we start believing that it's a problem. And then as soon as we start believing it's a problem, then we go on this journey of trying to fix and solve and get and become and be who we think we need to be okay over there, then, as it is, even if it looks totally unspiritual, even if it's totally uncomfortable and not what we want, not what we prefer. It's okay to not want our experience. But yet if we don't want our experience and then we run off trying to fix it or solve it or overcome it, then we're always running from ourselves. We're always split within ourselves. This part of ourselves that is experiencing things that we don't want and the part that's trying to get somewhere else. So as we rest in our being, we become more present to our experience as it is. Things can become more open and spacious and less problematic. We're not trying to fix and solve our experiences. We're not believing that it's a sign of lack or a lack on our part or something that's wrong with us. For so long, that was my journey. Something's wrong with me. So then I would keep going and going and going. Something is wrong with me because I'm experiencing this or feeling that. And then suddenly waking up to realize nothing's wrong with me. Nothing's wrong with me because I sometimes feel grief, but because I sometimes fear loss, because I sometimes experience despair or hopelessness or confusion. And even there, we can still move to sort of resolve certain issues as they come into the light of our being, as we rest in our being, and there's something that comes, that maybe some false belief that we've been holding on to, how we've been identifying with a victim, as a victim our whole lives, or whatever the might come into the light. And even if we take action to resolve or heal that, we can still take action without it being from this place of lack, from the sense of something's wrong with me because I'm feeling this. Something that there's a problem because I'm feeling this. We might still be moved to go to therapy or take vitamins or become more active or do some healing work. We might be moved in all kinds of ways, but we're not doing it from this place of something's missing, something's wrong, something needs to be fixed in me before I can rest, before I can let go, before I can be happy, be fulfilled. Instead, we're moving from this place that's already whole, that's already complete. We're not divided within ourselves, we're in alignment with ourselves. Which seems paradoxical to the mind, because the mind will believe, well, if it's not a problem, then I'm not going to do anything to fix it. Why do anything to fix it? Just leave it there. Which can be, it may arise, but it doesn't necessarily have to mean that. The mind will so easily say, well, it needs to be a problem for me to want to fix it. If I don't see it as a problem, then I'm not going to do anything to fix it or to resolve it. And this is the mind working in this dichotomy of either or, but it's not that either. So that as we rest in our being, we'll be guided. Maybe it's just feeling the emotion. Maybe it's doing some sort of shamanic work, or maybe it's doing some counseling, or maybe it's letting go of a relationship or a job that's not working. Could move us in any way. And so we have to let go too of any preconceived ideas of what's going to be asked of us. Which is when we know we're moving from a different place of our being, because the mind will have these ideas. Okay, this is what I need to do. And then it will make a plan and start charting territory to try to get somewhere else. Whereas when it comes from our beingness, it's not coming from this place that something's wrong, something needs to be fixed. It's not trying to get us anywhere. It's to explore more deeply the nature of ourselves so that we can heal these parts, so that we can rest more deeply in the sense of self that we are, in this sense of okayness and wholeness. So these parts that feel broken or split off can then come home and rest. So hopefully sharing some of these personal stories will be helpful for you, because it can be so subtle, the ways, just noticing how even after all of this knowing and all of this resting and being, that even some parts of myself can still be dismissed, can still contain a story that's so easy to latch onto, and how this can happen for all of us. And those stories that are so familiar, those ideas are ideas and expectations of how things should be, can be so subtle at times that we don't even realize that we're carrying an expectation. We think it's truth. So we're resting in being, and we're open that we can, new ways of perceiving can come to light. Can see where we might be believing things that are actually a disservice to ourselves, or that are perpetuating our suffering. Even though they might be disguised as the solution to our suffering. When we're truly open and rested, we can see how it's actually perpetuating my suffering, this continual trying to overcome and get rid of certain emotional experiences. It seems like that's from the mind, that's the answer to my suffering. but from my beingness, from the felt sense of what it is like to be in this body. It feels like that's a perpetuating the suffering through this clenching and trying to get and become, and it's coming from this place of lack and limitation. So my my battery is about to die, and I just wanna, I think that's an appropriate place to leave it. So again, just be very kind and gentle to yourself and know that whatever you're experiencing does not need to be a problem. It's only when we believe it's a problem that it starts fueling this cycle of suffering. And that as we open ourselves to our being, it includes the wholeness of blissful, but sometimes dark and desolate. But there can be this space within us that's open to it all, that doesn't need to make a problem out of any of it, knowing that all of it comes, all of it goes, all of it is part of this human experience. And the more we're able to meet these deep, dark parts as well as these open, blissful parts without grabbing hold of either one of them, the more we can live and be from this place of wholeness, this place of peace.